the Supreme Court's decision denying bail to Khalid and Sharjeel Imam in the 2020 Northeast Delhi riots larger conspiracy case has once again brought into focus a growing divergence in the court's bail jurisprudence under stringent laws like the UAPA. Hello and welcome to The Print. I, Ruchi Bhattar, will tell you how the Khalid Imam bail order diverges from the Supreme Court's own liberty-centric rulings. On Monday, while granting bail to 5 co-accused in the same judgment, the court held that Khalid and Imam stood on a qualitatively different footing, accepting the prosecution's claim that they played a central and formative role in the alleged conspiracy. On this basis, the court drew a sharp distinction between the accused persons based on perceived role and gravity, refusing to allow the length of incarceration, now nearing 6 years, to decisively tilt the balance in favor of liberty. The bench stressed that at the bail stage, courts cannot dissect evidence in isolation. Instead, allegations must be examined cumulatively to assess whether they are prima facie true under Section 43d(5) of the UAPA. While acknowledging that delay and prolonged incarceration are relevant consideration, the court made it clear that they do not operate as a trump card capable of overriding the statutory bar on bail once a prima facie case is found. This reasoning sits in visible tension with several earlier and equally authoritative Supreme Court rulings, including those delivered under stringent special statutes such as the UAPA and the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, where the court has consistently foregrounded personal liberty under Article 21, the right to a speedy trial, and proportionality, even in cases involving very serious allegations. Now, what are these cases? Let's take a look. A key counterpoint is the Supreme Court's 2021 ruling in the Union of India versus K.A. Najib. In this case, the court granted bail to a UAPA accused who had spent over 5 years in custody, with the trial far from completion. A 3-judge bench of Justices Anuradha Bose, N.V. Ramana, and now Chief Justice of India Surya Kant then held that the statutory restrictions on bail cannot eclipse the constitutional obligations of court to protect personal liberty when incarceration becomes disproportionate and indefinite. The court acknowledged the seriousness of terrorism-related offences, but held that prolonged detention without a realistic prospect of trial violates Article 21 of the Constitution. It emphasized that the right to a speedy trial is intrinsic to the right to life and personal liberty, and crucially clarified that Section 43d(5) of the UAPA does not oust the Constitutional Court's power to grant bail in such circumstances. The contrast becomes sharper when viewed alongside the Supreme Court's August 2024 decision granting bail to former Delhi Deputy CM Manish Sisodia in corruption cases investigated by the CBI and the ED. In Sisodia's case, the court held that his prolonged incarceration over 17 months without trial commencing violated his fundamental right to liberty and a speedy trial under Article 21. A bench of Justices B.R. Gavai and K.V. Vishwanathan noted that the trial had yet to see the light of the day and emphasized proportionality in bail jurisprudence, cautioning against the use of pre-trial detention as a punitive measure. While Sisodia's case did not arise under the UAPA, its constitutional reasoning placed delay and trial stagnation at the center of the bail analysis. This stands in stark contrast to the Khalid Imam ruling, where incarceration exceeding 5.5 years was not treated as a constitutionally determinative factor. An even more direct contrast emerges from Supreme Court's July 2024 ruling in Javed Ghulam Nabi Sheikh versus Union of India. In that case, the accused had spent approximately 4 years in custody in a UAPA case involving the alleged smuggling of counterfeit Indian currency sourced from Pakistan, an offence implicating national security. Despite the seriousness of the allegations and filing of a charge sheet, the court granted bail, holding that the state could not justify continued incarceration when it lacked the capacity to ensure a timely trial. A bench of Justices J.B. Pardiwala and Ujjal Bhuyan held that if the state or the prosecution agency has no wherewithal to protect an accused's fundamental right to speedy custody, it should not oppose bail merely on the ground that the crime is serious. The court categorically stated that Article 21 applies irrespective of the nature of offences and underscored that an under-trial remains not a convict. By contrast, in the Khalid Imam order, long incarceration was acknowledged but refused decisive constitutional weight. Unlike in the Sheikh case, where delay and trial stagnation was central to the grant of bail, the court treated delay as a relevant but ultimately subordinate factor in cases involving alleged conspiracy and public disorder. The divergence becomes even starker when the Khalid Imam ruling is compared with the Supreme Court's July 2024 decision in Sheikh Javed Iqbal versus State of Uttar Pradesh. In that case, the accused had spent 9 years in custody under the UAPA with only 2 witnesses examined, in a prosecution involving counterfeit currency and alleged cross-border terror financing. A bench of Justices Pardiwala and Bhuyan again granted bail, holding that the right to a speedy trial is a fundamental right traceable to Article 21 and that the seriousness of charges cannot justify indefinite pre-trial detention when there is no end in sight to the trial. The Supreme Court rejected the prosecution's argument that gravity alone could defeat bail and reaffirmed that Section 43(9)(d) does not oust the Constitutional Court's power to grant bail where fundamental rights are violated. Relying on K.A. Najib, the court held that long incarceration coupled with the unlikelihood of trial completion constitutes an independent and sufficient ground for bail, and that constitutional courts must lean in favor of constitutionalism and the rule of law even while interpreting stringent penal statutes. In Sheikh Javed Iqbal, Article 21 was treated as paramount and inviolable, capable of overriding statutory restrictions on bail. In contrast, the Khalid Imam ruling treats personal liberty as conditional, subordinated to statutory thresholds under the UAPA and the court's prima facie satisfaction that a conspiracy case exists. Read together, these judgments reveal a clear doctrinal divergence in the Supreme Court's bail jurisprudence. In liberty-centric cases, the top court earlier has treated delay and trial stagnation as constitutionally decisive. But in the Khalid Imam ruling, however, delay is acknowledged by the court but subordinated to the prima facie satisfaction of statutory conditions. The divergence is not textual but interpretive, arising from how differently the courts weigh liberty against perceived threats to public order and state security. This difference highlights an unresolved worry in the Supreme Court's approach to bail in UAPA cases. Whether personal liberty is a fixed constitutional principle that applies in all cases, or whether it becomes secondary and case-dependent, shaped by the seriousness of allegations and concerns about national security. What distinguishes these rulings is not merely the denial of bail, but the court's explicit refusal to allow delay to dilute UAPA's bail bar. Lastly, the Khalid Imam judgment lays bare a constitutional paradox. On one hand, the top court continues to affirm that Article 21 is sacrosanct and that personal liberty cannot be lightly curtailed. On the other hand, it permits prolonged pre-trial incarceration to persist where allegations involve conspiracy and national security, even when trials show little sign of early completion. With that, thank you for watching.